Good morning. It's Monday, August 25th, 2014. It's Tech Talk Today, episode 48. And yes, it is still somehow sunny in the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful. And we're back for another week of Tech Talk Today. And with me is an awesome council of Mumble citizens. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble citizens.
Hi-oh.
Good time-appropriate greetings.
Good day. Hello.
Hello.
Morgen.
Yeah, all right. We got a great turnout today in the Mumble Room. And I'll just say at the top of the show, a quick thank you to everybody who sent in your thoughts and feedback on follow-up from last Thursday's episode. I'm going to touch on that, hopefully, if I remember at the end of the episode. But I was reading your feedback all weekend long. You guys are awesome. But let's start with a news story that actually kind of makes me a little nostalgic for the old days of TechSnap. When we launched the TechSnap program, it was just when the PlayStation Network had been breached. Do you remember GeoHot? You remember they extracted the keys from the PlayStation console and they got access to the PSN network? And it really was all a snowball effect from when they banned Linux on the PlayStation because somebody decided, well, I want to put Linux on there, so they begin the process of hacking it, which then led to the process of getting backdoor access to the PlayStation Network. So that's when TechSnap got its start. And this feels like such ancient history now because it was almost 4 years ago. But here we are today on August 25th, 2014. The PlayStation Network is back online after being under attack Sunday evening. Sony Corp said that Sunday, its PlayStation Network was taken down by a denial-of-service attack, and the FBI was investigating the diversion of a flight. Two separate things going on at the same time. The FBI was investigating the diversion of a flight carrying a top Sony executive amid reports that there were explosives on board his plane. The company said in a posting on its PlayStation blog that no personal information of the network was accessed during the attack or the denial of service, which overwhelmed the system with heavy traffic. So let's get this again. While Sony's under attack Sunday with a denial of service, a plane carrying the Sony Online Entertainment president, John Smedley, was diverted, and this is confirmed by Smedley himself on Twitter. A group called Lizard Squad sent a message through its Twitter account to the American Airlines saying that Smedley's flight had explosives planted on board, according to a report by USA Today. The group also used Twitter to claim credit for the network attack around the same time. USA Today reported that the Dallas-Fort Worth flight to San Diego was diverted and landed safely in Phoenix. A PlayStation spokesman said in the United States that the diverted flight was being handled by the FBI and Sony had no comment to make on the matter. This is something. I mean, it's one thing to do a denial of service. It's another thing to do a coordinated denial of service and call in a bomb threat. So that means they knew where this guy was, what his itinerary was, where his flight was going to be, and flight number, and the airline. And they're doing a denial of service at the same time. What the hell is going on with Sony that we don't know about? There's got to be more to this. Somebody has it in for Sony. Does anybody in the Mumble Room have a theory as to what it is about Sony that could have these people so riled up they would call a bomb threat in on a plane and do denial of service at the same time? There's got to be more to this, right?
Well, I'm speechless. I've got nothing. I don't understand what anybody would have against Sony to this magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, sure, everybody's got problems with different companies. That's why I'm wondering if there's something maybe that we're just not aware of in the general public, because this is pretty aggressive stuff. And this is the kind of thing, it just always has to be like this, doesn't it? It has to always go down like the hackers do one thing, so the law enforcement pushes back, so then the hackers push back harder and they do something more and they go over the top and more, and they essentially legitimize all of the fear-mongering that the law enforcement has been doing about cyber attacks and homegrown cyber terrorists and cyber warfare and cyber this, cyber that, and it essentially legitimizes all of the bullcrap propaganda they've been pumping down the public's throats for years now to scare us into spending millions of dollars on cyber defense or whatever the crap you want to call it, cyber law enforcement. And then these guys go and do stupid crap like this that will push their hand, and they will overreact, and they will overreach. And it's awful because they get to do it behind this group name. There's no individuals. There's no reason, no rationale apparent. They just take to Twitter and they just grandize themselves and grab attention for themselves. It's so frustrating to watch as somebody who's watched the internet just get junked up over the years as these things just sort of escalate over time.
What if it's somebody from within pushing the agenda? This is going to sound very geeky, but...
Whoa. Go. Okay, hold on. All right, hold on. You know what? I'll even fry a little conspiracy bacon. Here you go. A little bacon from Safeway right by the studio.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking what's going on is perhaps maybe whatever FBI entity this is trying to scare us and do all the fear monitoring on cyber attacks, maybe they coordinated this. I'm just saying.
PC Wiz, go ahead. What did you have to say on the topic of freedom?
As Richard Stallman pointed out, Blu-ray takes your freedom away. So maybe we're just upset about Blu-ray.
Freedom!
Yeah. Freedom. Okay. All right. Thanks, PC Wiz. That was good commentary, and I like your eagle impression, too. I don't know. This is a story we'll keep watching, and maybe we'll have more later in the week or by the time TechSnap rolls around. I want to talk about this Android attack that is really getting a lot of attention. And yes, it is a problem, but like so many stories we talk about Android, these things really just get a whole life of their own, and it kind of goes back to that fear-mongering thing. So this is all according to a bunch of research that came out of the University of Michigan and also the University of California at Riverside. So it's called a user interface attack. It's really quite simple. It makes use of design programming frameworks that share memory, allowing one application to gather information about the state of another application. The information can be gathered without any special Android permissions. It can just be done by grabbing screen pixels, according to a paper presented at the Usenix Security Conference on Friday. The technique gives attackers the ability to infer the state of a targeted application, enabling more convincing attacks. So if a malware knows that a targeted user has clicked, say, a login button, then it can throw up a dialog asking for a username and password. If the malware can then infer that the user is about to take a picture of a check or sensitive document, like my wife can deposit checks by taking a picture of them with her smartphone, it can then quickly take a second picture in the background because it's able to monitor the state of the application. Now, okay, so this all sounds really bad. Okay, sure, yes, I'm sure it sounds quite awful. And there are a few caveats. An attack application must be already running in the background, so you have to be running this attacking up. Well, that's not too tough. It has to be able to also determine foreground activity of a targeted app within 80 to 90% accuracy for most applications. Not too tough if it's a well-known application. The technique detects transitions in the UI state of a targeted app and then uses a signature to identify the new state. So it's going to have a list of known apps, so that's another kind of restriction. Videos demonstrating the UI interface attack, the research group showed the malicious software stealing usernames and passwords from an H&R Block application on an Android device, copying an image of a check taken by a Chase Bank application, and stealing credit card information from the Newegg store app. By design, Android allows apps to be preempted or hijacked. This is said in the statement. But the thing is, you have to do it at the right time so the user doesn't notice. We do that, and that makes our attacks unique. But because the attack does not focus on any specific vulnerability in the operating system, it's kind of hard to harden against something like this. This is also according to the research paper. There's not a lot of options because this is in some way just kind of how GUIs work. So the researchers focused on Android, but the operating system architecture they exploit is also likely exploitable on macOS and Windows as well. We believe our attack, they say, on Android is likely to be generalizable to other platforms. But so to break it down, what they're saying here, guys, is we're running a background application. We now have a collection of popular applications and how their UI renders and moves about. Our background application is essentially monitoring the screen of your Android device. And when your application's moving around in a way that we pattern match with a list of known applications, we now know what you're doing in that application. And from the background app, we can send up a false username and password input box. So you're actually putting your username and password into my app instead of the actual app you intended to. Or I can take a quick screenshot or a second picture. And they're saying, look, this isn't really a security flaw so much as a background application is able to look at the screen. But yet, this is blowing up because this talk was on Friday, and I probably saw 30 different outlets over the weekend run the story. So there's probably some smoke. I mean, there's some smoke, so there's probably some fire. But I don't know how hot of a fire. Anybody have any thoughts on this story in the Mumble Room?
I'm looking at the story, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it requires a background application running, so the user would have to install that intentionally.
Yes.
And see that's the thing is I don't think it's I think I'm short of saying non-starter.
Yeah, I think it's like, well, on all of the other platforms, what was to prevent something from running in the background taking screenshots in the past? So we've replicated a general design philosophy flaw in the new mobile operating systems that we had in the desktop operating systems. Is essentially what this report, to me, is seeing from what I can tell. Guess.
Yeah.
All right, here's an interesting stat. Get ready for this one. Most smartphone users... You guys have a guess how many apps per month most smartphone users download before I tell you what the number is? Any guesses?
None.
25?
25. Good
Seven.
guess. Good guess. Any other guesses?
19.
5.
5. Ooh, okay. A little pessimistic. 5. Okay. Boy, if you're an app developer and you're trying to make a living on the App Store, you probably hope it's more than 5, right? Well, bad news. Most smartphone users download 0 apps per month. Mobile apps have been skyrocketing in popularity. We all acknowledge that, especially since like the App Store and Play Store and stuff like that. Apple even boasted 75 billion all-time App Store downloads in June. And then in July, they declared the best month ever for the App Store with record revenue and record people downloading apps. Yet, according to a survey, most U.S. smartphone owners download 0 apps in a typical month. This is according to ComScore, which is kind of well known for doing this kind of data. And here's the other thing. Only about 1/3 of smartphone owners download any apps in an average month. So 1/3 of smartphone users download any apps at all in an average month. Only 1/3. While with the bulk of those downloading 1 to 3 apps. The top 7% of smartphone owners account for nearly half of all download activity in a given month. 7% of smartphone owners. Half of all download activity.
Well, you know, I can liken this to something like, well, you know, they've already downloaded all their apps that they're going to need or want, and they have no reason to download any more apps.
Totally agree.
And the other thing is that Apple might be padding their number with updates. Who knows?
Oh, I wonder. I don't think they do, actually. I think they've...
I think so?
No, I think they don't. I think they stated they don't. But here's the question it leads me to ask. And this may be a good question for Michael Dominic and Coda Radio later today, too, is if 7% of the users are downloading more than half of the apps, then when you're making an app, you really should need to make an app for that 7%. And what does that 7% want? Well, those are likely going to be the more technical users, right?
That's me.
So even though the smartphone market is ginormous to a degree like no other market we've ever seen for computer electronics, it's us, at the end of the day, the technical users that are making them any money. I mean, I'm sure it's that 7% isn't just tech users, but I bet a vast majority of it is.
It might be.
I disagree.
All right, lay it on me, guys.
Mobile app games as well. You change games.
Ah.
We had a Tech
I'm-
Talk today episode about that changing of games and rotary, especially women doing that. So it might be something in the game department.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it's like kids who just load every app they come across that make up a majority of those
Sure.
7%.
Sure.
That people who know are tech savvy, they know what apps they want, so they just load it on the phone when they
That's a
get
good
their
point.
phone.
You know, the other
And
thing
then
I'm
they
realizing...
find good apps and they get those later.
I wonder how
like
free
one and
plays in
one.
here, because see, this ComScore report's just talking about downloads, and I'm talking about purchases. That's two different things too, because people are more likely to download a free app. Like when you're talking like kids and the games and stuff, way more likely kids are going to be able to just download a free app because they don't have to have any payment stuff associated with that account. They don't have to have I don't think you have to have. Do you have to have a password when you install a free app? I don't even remember.
I
They're going to
don't
Android.
think so.
So it's just, it is interesting, but what to me at least underscores is, man, it's hard out there for app developers to make a buck. Because if you think of the majority aren't downloading any apps in a single month, I think it's what you said, Eric. I think it's they get their apps and they're done. They're good for a while.
Yep.
Okay, so we got one more kind of interesting story, and then we got the most popular open source cloud projects of 2014. So see if you guys can nail those. But first, we got to talk a little bit about our buddies in Redmond. Microsoft is set to unveil Windows 9 on September 30th. Boy, look at them chug-a-lugging. I'm sure this will solve all of the problems. Microsoft is planning to unveil Windows 8, this Windows 8 successor, I'm sorry. Oh, a little Freudian slip there. Next month at a special press event. Sources familiar with Microsoft's plans tell The Verge that the software maker is tentatively planning for its press event for September 30 to detail upcoming changes. Oh, I misread that earlier. And this is, by the way, the Windows Threshold code name. It won't be called Threshold when it launches, though, I guarantee you. So if they do it in September, The Verge is speculating that it may be available in October. That would be unbelievably short turnaround. That's The Verge's speculation there. I've never seen Microsoft go RTM and then ship within 30 days, right? They almost always have at least a 90-day window from RTM. But I'm not sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's the new Microsoft. Microsoft has stated in the past that they are particularly interested in upping their release cycle for Windows to try to iterate faster and faster. I think it's because they know they need to dig themselves out of a hole. Hey, before we get to the most popular cloud open source projects of 2014, I'd like to mention my most popular project of 2014. Getting this network to the next level, and you can help me do it by going over to patreon.com/today and invest in all of the Jupiter Broadcasting lineup. Patreon.com/today. This is a one-stop shop. The Tech Talk Today show is a celebration of an audience-funded network, so that's why it's over on the Today Patreon page, and that's where you go. All the revenue generated there goes back into the network. That's one of the reasons why I'm one of the only people on this show in a host capacity, because we're trying to keep the show itself lean, so that way all of the funds we raise here, as much as we possibly can, go into the whole network. And you can help invest in this. Go over to right now. Stop what you're doing. Just why not? Why not? Even if you've already gone there, just patreon.com/today. I would. I just did it. That's why you can see it on my screen. Patreon.com/today. Pledge any amount you can afford. I've got a default of $3. That's monthly. But any amount, more or less, is fine. We also have some recommended pledge levels down here at the bottom, including some swag slots, which, boy, I guess you could get in right now, and you would still technically have a chance to have a successful August payment if you'd like to get the swag. We don't do it every month. That's why I'm making a mention of it. We do it from time to time, and it just requires that the month that we are doing it, you have a successful transaction in the swag level, at that swag pledge level. And there's a few slots left if you want to jump in there before August wraps up. And then you could shift down, I suppose, if that's how you roll. That's fine. Patreon.com/today. Okay, so Mumble Room, can you guess the most popular open source cloud project of 2014?
OpenStack.
Aw, ick! You just nailed it, right? How did you guess it like that? Did you see the report already?
No, it's just there's a lot of buzz around it.
Okay, all right. What do you got number 2, though? What do you got number 2?
Maybe Docker?
Oh my gosh, you guys have nailed it. All right, you guys are good at this. And number 3 is KVM. Okay, all right. Obviously, you guys are already on top of it. You know what's up. So this is at the Cloud Open and Linux Foundation trade shows that were held in conjunction. They did this survey. They went through, and the Linux Foundation then announced the survey at the end of the event, which is now over, which we covered in Sunday's Linux Action Show. So OpenStack remains to be the most popular overall, which is not surprising. OpenStack is only 4 years old. The infrastructure as a service cloud project is very popular, with support from HP, Red Hat, VMware, Rackspace, all of them. What's surprising is number 2, really. If you think about it, Docker is just over a year old, and it's already up there with the likes of KVM and OpenStack. And then behind Docker and OpenStack, then you've got KVM, which is kind of funny because I'm sure in terms of actual production, KVM's probably higher. That's KVM, if you're not familiar, is the x86 virtualization technology, which has just recently been ported to Power architectures too, which IBM's super stoked about. One of the older open source infrastructure as a service cloud projects, Ceph, which came in at number 4. So good congratulations to the Docker folks. That's amazing. That is really kind of amazing.
That's pretty cool.
In less than 2 years, they really have just everybody's talking about containerization, and way more than they were. I mean, the topic's always been around. It's always been possible. In fact, I have a form of Linux containers running here at the studios that's not Docker. But you know what? They have single-handedly moved the dial on the whole conversation, and it's going to fundamentally change the way applications are delivered on Linux. It's going to fundamentally change the density you can get on servers. It's huge technology, so it's good. Congratulations to them. Before we run, I just want to say thank you to everyone who chimed in. Essentially, I got an incredible amount of feedback, both in the subreddit and in the emails, YouTube comments, in the IRC room, everywhere. And I wanted to say thank you. So it's Wednesday, we kind of wanted to see what engagement levels were, because we weren't sure if the daily format was working, because daily does take a considerable amount of work. It means every day you have to prep a show, and at least that means, for me, most days I have to prep 2 shows, maybe 3 shows. And so I wanted to make sure that it was worth all of that work. And it wasn't normally the way I would tell on a show is by the even just like totally ignoring download numbers. I could tell by generally the level of engagement a show gets, feedback, comments, emails, things like that. Mumble Room, live attendance, etc., etc. And all of that will generally also correlate to a download number. So if one area is weak, it generally would also indicate another area is weak, which for this show I don't actually have download numbers because our RSS feed service is broken. So, but that's fine because I don't actually do this show for the numbers. I do it for those of you who enjoy it and those of you who support the network. That's what's actually kind of awesome about the Patreon model is it means content creators like myself don't have to chase some number that really, it's not about that. It's about making something sustainable, something good, something of quality, something artisan. And so that's what I like about the Patreon model. So that was really, that number's doing fine. I'm happy there. And so I wasn't quite sure about the engagement level. And a lot of you chimed in and said, well, it's really kind of what the Mumble Room surmised on Thursday. A daily show is just a lot harder to sink your teeth into at that level because you're almost just trying to tread water in a sense with the Daily Show, and not in a bad way. I don't mean to paint this in like a desperate light. People seem to really be enjoying the show. A lot of you fit into your routines, and I think that's really awesome. A lot of you shared about how you start your morning, or how you before you start a big show on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, you'll start with a starter show of Tech Talk Today, and you'll watch through that, and then you'll jump into the longer show. Or if you've got a little extra time in the commute, you'll pad it with Tech Talk. I mean, a lot of different examples of how you guys enjoy the show, which was really cool to hear. So no changes planned for now. We'll keep chug-a-lugging on. One thing I did notice is nobody really seemed to comment on the time. That wasn't really, some people mentioned morning, especially those of you who watch live, but on a whole, it just seemed to be the daily aspect of it, not so much the time of it. If there's anything I might change in the future, it might be the time, but right now I have no intentions to change anything. We'll just keep going right along. We'll see how things go when the seasons change, because right now, every time I've been doing the show, it's beautiful out. Right now, it's sunny, it's gorgeous, it's a nice drive-in. It's not dark and rainy and cold as hell. When that happens, I might want to move it slightly later. And I'd also be curious to see how that would affect the news cycle and how much from the current day we would fit in if we did that. All stuff we'll talk about with plenty of heads up and warnings. And anything major, I'll always bounce off the patrons too. So another reason to go over to patreon.com/today. And don't forget, you can join us live. We'll be here for the rest of the week until Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv. JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar has got that in your local time zone automatically. Boom. It's like robot magic. And today at JupiterBroadcasting.com is the email address where you can get a hold of me, or even better, techtalktoday.reddit.com. Submit story ideas, comments, suggestions, vote up and down, anything like that. Just give me an idea. I use that to get a temperature of the type of stories you like to see covered on Tech Talk Today. All right, so we're going to wrap it up with a classic commercial as we do, but it's not that old. You guys remember these IBM Linux commercials? These were great, and there was one that really stood out, and I wanted to play that since we were just talking about the top open source projects. And what's funny is I think all of the open source projects in that list are younger than this commercial. I think this commercial was made before any of those projects existed.
I think you should see this.
It's just a kid.
This is a G chord. He's learning, absorbing. He's getting smarter every day.
Homo habilis was the first to use tools.
A player who makes the team great is more valuable than a great player. Losing yourself in the group for the good of the group, that's teamwork.
It's happening fast.
We've always watched the stars. If you look at the sky, you can see the beginning of time.
Collecting data is only the first step toward wisdom, but sharing data is the first step toward community.
Poetry. There's not much glory in poetry, only achievement.
Knowledge amplification. What he learns, we all learn. What he knows, we all benefit from.
One little thing can solve an incredibly complex problem.
Everything's about timing, kid.
This is business. Faster, better, cheaper. Constant improvement.
So, you want to fly, huh? Wind speed, thrust, it's physics.
Res publica non dominetur.
Plumbing, it's all about the tools.
Speak your mind. Don't back down.
Does he have a name?